Hello, everyone. I always feel like I need some sort of beret or disguise, just like Natasha would for Spy Stream. It is a Spy Stream kind of night. I'm a little nervous about this Spy Stream, if I'm going to be honest, because they're not doing the event via Zoom. Instead, they're doing it on Facebook, so we're just going to see how it works out. But Spy Stream is where we watch a live woke training and we comment on it. And this is when we get a chance to really infiltrate what the woke left is doing. This is when we get a chance for them to see what they say when they think that no one else is watching. And tonight, well, we got the big guns are coming out tonight, guys, because tonight's event is going to be not on our usual Zoom, but on Facebook. They're live streaming this on Facebook. This is the only link that I was given to join when I signed up for tonight's stream, but I still think it'll be worth it. Even though we aren't going to have like the full infiltration, it's not like we're going behind a password or anything. It's always exciting when we get access to those private trainings that like we're really not supposed to be at. But I do have my burner Facebook account. Yes, I have a burner Facebook account. I don't want any shit. Like I have to go into a lot of like leftist groups, okay? Like I have like you guys have no idea the amount of burner accounts I have, the amount of email addresses I have to try to work out some of this stuff so that they don't know that it's coming from me. It is reaching epic level proportion. So we're on my burner Facebook account today, one of them, and this is what we're going to be watching. Saving our schools, activating parents in an age of anti-CRT backlash with keynotes from two of the patron saints of the woke left, Kimberly Crenshaw and Ibram X. Kendi. So fun fact, you guys know how we've been doing Socialism Saturday? Maybe we'll make Socialism Saturday, not evening version because I'm going to a Halloween party this Saturday, but maybe I'm going to do a version in the afternoon. One of the YouTube channels that we rely on for Socialism Saturday, guess who's on that YouTube channel? Ibram X. Kendi. There's a whole interview with Ibram X. Kendi on Haymarket Books YouTube channel, so I'm sure Ibram X. Kendi definitely isn't pushing Marxism, even though he's spending time on literal Marxist YouTube channels. Maybe we'll watch that this weekend. But let's see what the description is for tonight. Education is the cornerstone of a multiracial democracy, and parents are where we learn to engage in, parents, oh God, they don't care about parents, and schools are where we learn to engage in society in meaningful ways. Isn't that was an interesting Freudian slip of mine, wasn't it? Because I read that as parents are how we learn to engage in society in meaningful ways, but what they actually wrote is education is the cornerstone of a multiracial democracy, and schools are where we learn to engage in society in meaningful ways. Still, parents, students, and educators across the country are experiencing a climate where far-right attacks have made our schools playgrounds for partisan politics and racial division through book bans, anti-critical race theory legislation, attacks on LGBTQIA students and educators, bans on comprehensive sex education, and ignoring the calls for student mental health support. Isn't it funny? Because let me just make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see. Oh, by the way, yeah, this is sponsored by the Women's March, by the way. But, I think it's kind of funny because remind me, didn't the woke left spend basically the entirety of 2021 saying critical race theory isn't even taught in K through 12 schools? And here we are with a webinar from Kimberly Crenshaw and Ibram X. Kendi, where they are literally saying that far-right activists are attacking critical race theory. Why would that matter if critical race theory wasn't taught in K through 12 schools? Well, I guess we'll find out tonight as we watch their webinar. Guys, this webinar will be getting started, hopefully, around 7:30. Apparently on this YouTube channel, I have no idea how these YouTube stream works. But we're going to give it a go and we're going to figure it out. So if you have never been to a spy stream before, it is a little bit different. And I want to make sure we have an opportunity to discuss how this is going to work. Now, number one, this is a live training. It is live. This is why we had to start a couple hours later than I usually stream because I can't control what time people schedule these things. It's just the way it goes. We are watching a live training. I do not know what they're going to say. I do not know what they are going to do. I do not know if their technology will screw up. I do not know if my technology will screw up. God, like that's usually like the least likely thing to happen, but it can. I don't know what's going to happen. So we're going to do our very best. We're going to work it out. And I just need everyone to be a little extra patient because when you're dealing with live trainings, that is a little bit different than dealing with something that is pre recorded and uploaded to YouTube. All right. Number two, I do not do commentary over the training. And that's because when it's live, I can't rewind it and listen to things again. So I actually do want to be able to hear it. But what I will do is I will type my comments in chat and then I will display those comments in chat on the screen so that you can see my commentary. But as a general rule, I do not talk over the training unless it's like, kind of like they're just like bantering or whatever. It's not really something I'm going to disrupt, but I do actually want to listen to what they're saying. And so that tends to be how I show my comments. Now, for you in the chat who are watching, all super chats will be displayed on the screen. And of course, I always thank you guys for supporting the channel. It does really help me out. If you send in a super chat, I want you to know that I will be displaying it on the screen. I will display it for a period of time that will give everyone enough time to read the super chat. But during the training, I will not read the super chat out loud because, again, I don't want to disrupt the training. All right. And also, like I want to encourage everyone, even if you're not super chatting things in, I'm a really big fan of displaying really smart, insightful, or just quite frankly funny comments on the screen. And so please type your comments into the chat about the training. And if you make me laugh, or if you make me think, or if I think you're making a great point, I'll display that comment on the screen as well. I want this to be a participatory activity. I think that that's how people learn. All right. Now, the last rule, this is kind of like specific to tonight, and I saw Jan asking it earlier in the chat. Will we be done tonight in time for nothing remotely controversial? Yes, in theory. Okay, so as you guys know, on Tuesdays, I have two streams, at least, maybe more if I'm feeling saucy, but generally two. And our second stream is going to be coming up at 9:30 tonight. It is nothing remotely controversial. It is a show that I do with my friend Joshua the Psychic every single week, where we talk about the news and whatever's going on in the world. And Joshua, who is really a professional psychic in real life, will try to predict what's going to happen. Joshua has a freakishly high accuracy rate. And even if you are not, even if you don't believe in psychics, which I understand that some of you don't, I promise you it is still a fun show. It is a lighthearted look at the news. And Joshua's delightful. Whether or not you believe that he's actually a psychic, he's delightful, he's funny, he's entertaining. And I really want to encourage everyone to come to Nothing Remotely Controversial, which we will be doing tonight at 9:30 after the stream because this presentation is scheduled to wrap up at 9. Casey just booked a session with him today. I think that's great, Casey. You're really going to love it. Joshua does a great job. I have worked with him for like 87 years at this point, and I actually said to him the other day, I was like, Joshua, I don't know how to function without you. And he said, that's okay, Carlin. That's okay. You can keep paying me. Because he is actually like, he coaches me in real life. So we do lots of stuff together. But anyway, we love doing the show. We think it's a lot of fun and we love spending time with you guys on Tuesday nights. And that will be coming up tonight at 9:30 after the presentation. All right. One last thing before I do my little spiel. I want everyone to know I do have rules in my chat. Okay. The rules in my chat are very simple. This is not one of those chats. I do want to encourage everyone to chat in. I want to encourage everyone to chat in really smart comments. I want you to chat in things that are insightful and funny. However, this is not an open, unmoderated chat. I curate my channel because there's only so much nonsense I can take. And there are two simple rules that I'm going to ask every single person in the chat to follow. Number one, don't be a dick. And number two, no whining. That's it. That's all I need. Now, you can make fun of the people that were watching in the presentation. I don't care what you say about Kimberly Crenshaw unless you're doing something that's overtly racist, and then that's not going to be allowed. But like overtly, not like woke leftist version of racist, you guys know what I'm talking about. I don't care if you make fun of the people in the presentation. That's not what I'm talking about. You will not be a dick to me, and you will not be a dick to other people in the chat. I'm trying to cultivate a nice environment that's nice for everyone. And I know because my audience members have told me that they really appreciate that I don't allow this nonsense to go on in the chat. Number 2, no whining. If I ask you to stop doing something, just stop doing it. I don't want excuses. I don't want whining. I don't want complaining. I don't want to hear you say over and over again, I'm not whining. I'm not whining. If you, I promise you, one of the easiest things you can do to get blocked on my channel is to whine at me when I have asked you to stop whining. There are reasons I have these rules. I find this behavior to be distracting from what we're trying to do, which is to create a nice community where we can learn about what is going on in the far left progressive ideology. We can learn together, we can help each other, we can support each other. And there are just certain things that I'm not willing to tolerate anymore. Not willing to do it. I'm a full grown adult, not playing around with any of this YouTube bullshit. So those are the rules. I ask everyone to follow them. If you don't follow them, you're not going to be chatting for long. I can promise you that. Lastly, guys, if you appreciate my work with Spy Stream and with all of the other things I've been doing, I did actually just post another podcast for the Actively Unwoke podcast today. I posted a couple of them this week because I had a little bit of a break there. I was launching some other stuff. I've also been working on some articles for Actively Unwoke, my Substack. I'll tell you about that in a second. But Sarah says, oh my God, I got to comment on this. So Libs of TikTok was banned off of this leftist platform. I have an account on that leftist platform. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. We'll see how long I last on the leftist platform. But I did join after I heard Libs of TikTok got banned because I was like, what's going on? Anyway, if you guys appreciate my work and you want to support it, there are lots of ways that you can support it. Number 1, subscribe to the channel. I have my main channel, youtube.com/Dr. I actually think it's Dr. Carlin B now because YouTube changed it. Anyway, so youtube.com/Dr. Carlin B, I think is the URL for my main channel now. I also have a second channel called youtube.com/Actively Unwoke. Please subscribe to both of them. Please turn on notifications, all that good stuff. I do post different types of content on the two channels, and I post more frequently on my main channel than I do on my second one. I also have lots of different ways you can become a monthly or one-time supporter. You can do it on Patreon, anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to 50 or $250 a month, depending on what types of perks you want and how much you like me on any given day. For some of the perks, you can get exclusive swag and stuff like that. So that's going to be available over on Patreon. You can also, if you don't want to give money to Patreon, totally cool, man. I have my locals as a backup option. So locals is my community. It is where I spend the most time. It is where I do the most interaction. If that's the type of thing you're looking for, you want to talk to me in a private, unrecorded setting, then you're going to want to join locals because we do 2 private Zoom calls every single week on Mondays and on Wednesdays. Our next one is tomorrow at noon. If you're on the Patreon, you can also get access to those Zoom calls. So I don't exclude anyone on Patreon from the perks that everyone in locals gets. It just happens to be that most people on those calls are in locals. So on locals, you can do $5 a month or more if you want to. You can do $50 a year or more if you want to. You can also make a one-time gift, and that's all available to you. And if you appreciate my work on Substack, I have several different Substacks. I've got 2 of them listed here, but I've got a whole bunch more that I'm working on building out because I want writing to be a pretty big part of what I do going forward. You can become a paid subscriber on those Substacks if you want to. All of my Substack articles are free. So I don't charge for any of the articles. I don't have private members only articles or things like that. I want the knowledge to be completely free. But if you appreciate it, there are paid subscription options that you can avail yourselves of if you do want to support the work I'm doing. Those are some of the best ways to support my work. I really do appreciate it, guys. It's what keeps me in business. And yeah, that's all the shilling I'm going to do. So we have about 15 minutes before this event is going to start. I don't have anything else to talk about right now. We're just waiting for the event to start. I don't know how this is gonna work. Let me just, like, reload. Like, am I gonna get, like, some sort of video or something where okay, so they've changed okay, so it says watch like, it says it has a live stream now. I don't see the live stream yet. Basically, what's going on right now is we're waiting for this live stream to start. So I want to talk about, just because maybe we have a couple extra minutes. Hang on. Why don't we do some education fun time while we've got a couple extra minutes? Hang on, let me just get this up. I'm going to show you guys a Twitter thread I wrote today. I got to adjust my screen. I want to show you guys a Twitter thread I wrote because we got a little extra time. So, as people may have heard, and this is going to become an article on my Actively Unwoke Substack. That's carlin.substack.com. I'm hopefully going to write it up later tonight. But I wanted to make sure I commented on this because Kanye West is just getting canceled everywhere. He is getting canceled by his agent. He is getting canceled by Adidas. He is getting canceled for his documentary. He is getting canceled from his bank. He is getting canceled everywhere, and the excuse that they are saying is he made anti Semitic remarks. Now, I'm not going to excuse what Kanye West said. However, I will say this. I don't think, in the grand scheme of things, it was actually that bad, especially when you compare it to some things that some of the leftists have said about Israel. People on the left have said far more anti Semitic things than Kanye West has. And I think we can all acknowledge that, while also saying, maybe I wouldn't have said those exact words, Kanye. I don't think it was the smartest thing in the world for him to do. But what I want us to acknowledge is that Kanye West did not get canceled because of what he said about the Jews. Kanye West got canceled because he is taking their power away from them. So I want to read you this Twitter thread, and I just want to talk about it maybe for a couple of minutes while we're waiting for this stream to get started. And this is on my Actively Unwoke Twitter account. Guys, please make sure you follow me on Actively Unwoke on Twitter, because, as you all know, my personal account got permanently banned for a month for nonsense. And I did eventually get it reinstated, and hopefully that will never happen again with Elon Musk buying Twitter. But when I was permanently banned, this account was my home base. So please make sure you're following me on this account if you're on the hellscape that is Twitter. If you're not on the hellscape that's Twitter, I totally understand it. Let me read you this thread. Don't understand why Kanye West is getting canceled even though he's black? This seems to fly in the face of the typical woke oppression hierarchy in which black people dramatically outrank Jewish people in terms of perceived oppression points. Here's what you need to know. The reason he's getting canceled is that the woke left don't consider him to be black. I've explained a million times that whiteness is not about the color of your skin. Whiteness is who owns the power structure. Kanye owns the power structure. Therefore, he can't be black. Now, I just want to interject here. What are some other words for who owns the power structure? Boss, landlord, manager, capitalist. These are who the woke left targets. They perceive everyone who is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur would be a code word for someone for who owns the power structure. Even a homeowner, a property owner, anyone who owns private property, this is going to apply to. When people say whiteness, it is not about your skin color. It is about who owns the power structure. White or whiteness only refers to your skin color when it's convenient for the woke left to utilize your skin color against you to remove you from power. In removing you from power, they gain more power for themselves. Gaining as much power as possible is always their goal. Kanye West must be canceled. Not because they care about him being anti-Semitic. They don't. People on the left have said much worse things. He must be canceled because he threatens their power. They don't care that he's black because their goal is never about fixing racism. This is a point that a lot of people do not understand. Racism is the god of the woke left. It is their god. It is the thing they worship. It is the thing they talk about all the time. It is the thing that they see everywhere. The definition of critical race theory is an academic ideology founded in academia in the 70s that says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction. And the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in every single circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred. If you see racism in everything, in every interaction, in every system, in every institution, in every product, in every action or behavior that a person takes, if you see racism in everything, that means that racism is your god. It is what you worship. It is the thing you place at the center of your universe. Are you going to try to kill your god? The woke left will never try to defeat racism. The goal is not to defeat racism because if they defeated racism, if they fixed the problem of racism, they would very literally be killing off their God. And so no, they don't care about racism. They don't care that Kanye West is actually a black man. They don't care because that's not what this is about. The goals of the woke left are always the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in a Marxist utopia. Look at everything they're doing through that lens, and you will always understand their true intentions. So Kanye West got canceled because he did not bend the knee to what the woke left wanted from him. That is why he got canceled. And they're perfectly fine with doing it because they don't consider Kanye West to be black. They consider him to be white because Kanye West is a capitalist. Kanye West is an entrepreneur. Kanye West is a power holder. Kanye West is a private property owner. Because of all these things, they have no problem at all canceling him because he stepped out of line from what they wanted. Now, the remarks he made about the Jews, that was just an excuse. It had nothing to do with that. They don't care about that at all in any way. If Kanye hadn't made those remarks about the Jews, mark my words, they would have found another reason. It was just an excuse. It was just a reason to cancel him. It wasn't the cause of him getting canceled. And it's really important that we understand these things because if you don't understand their underlying motivations, then we're never going to be able to defeat them. This is the thing that's going to trip us up from winning this battle with the woke left because too few people understand that they don't care about racism, they don't care about justice, they don't care about fairness, they don't care about equality. They only care about power and destabilizing the system because they hate capitalism, because they want everyone to be beholden to the state and their ideology in the image of Marx. That is what they're doing. All right, I just thought I'd share that before we get started because we have a little extra time, and I hope you guys appreciated that explanation. And hey, if you want more information about that, I do have a whole podcast, the Actively Unwoke podcast, as it turns out. I'm just waiting for it to load on the screen here so I can show you. And you can find the Actively Unwoke podcast over at activelyunwoke.com/podcast. You can find it up here in the menu. And it is on Apple, Spotify, Google, all the major podcasting providers. I have 24 episodes. You can also listen to them here all on the website, by the way. I archive everything on the website just for posterity, but you can listen to it on any major podcasting platform as well. And if you're subscribed to the podcast and you're enjoying it, please leave it a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That would really help me out. I actually get a fair number of listens to this podcast. I get anywhere between 500 and 1,500 listens like a day. And I don't even really talk about it that much, but I do have it. I do post very regularly to it. We're talking about 20-minute quick episodes where I explain a concept. I give you something highly practical. Oftentimes different than what you're going to see in my videos and definitely shorter form for the most part. So if you appreciated my explanation about Kanye West, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast and you'll get lots more stuff like that. All right, let me just go ahead and refresh this live stream. Nothing seems to be happening yet. Nothing's happening yet, but that's okay. We've got about 5 minutes, so hopefully we get started soon. Guys, please mount that like button if you appreciate Spy Stream. And again, I'm just going to put the rules up on the screen for people who might be joining because this is going to be a live training. So I can't control the technology. I can't control when they get started. I can only do the best I can. And yeah, we're basically just waiting for them to start the live stream now, and hopefully they do that soon. I mean, they seem to be futzing about with their Facebook page right now. It's changing every time I refresh it. So I have to believe that we're going to be getting started here soon. They've turned off posting on their Facebook page. I hope everyone had a great day. Again, we will be doing Nothing Remotely Controversial tonight right after this. This is scheduled to wrap up at about 9 o'clock, and Nothing Remotely Controversial starts at 9:30. To answer Bot's question earlier, I'm not drinking beer tonight. I'm drinking the typical bubbly sparkling water. I don't need to drink for every stream, just for like happy hours, really. And we're basically just waiting for get started, guys. So I hope you're all having a great day. Let me check in. And I just want to mention that I always stream on, well, almost always, not always, but almost always stream on YouTube, on Odyssey, on Rockfin, on Rumble, even on Gitter and on Facebook as well. So I just want to say hi to everyone who is watching on one of the other platforms that I'm streaming on right now. And thank you for tuning in. Ooh, I think something just happened on the Facebook page. I think it's starting. It's starting. Okay, let me see. Make this nice and big. Stop share. Chrome tab. There we go. I don't hear any audio yet, but it is counting down and should be starting soon. Excellent. Excellent. Guys, mount that like button if you appreciate spying on Kimberly Crenshaw and Ibermex Kendi tonight. And if you ever find a presentation, like a live presentation or a live training that you think would be good for Spy Stream, please let me know. Even if people charge for it, I've paid to get into trainings before and then stream them live on the internet, which, you know, the people putting on the trainings may not have appreciated. One time I actually got called out mid-training for streaming their training live on the internet. That was actually great. That was like one of the best things. But anyway, if you guys ever find trainings that you think would be good for Spy Stream, just let me know. We can always do a Spy Stream. And I love Spy Stream because we really see what they think. Oh, yes, Phil, we've seen Kimberly Crenshaw and Ibermex Kendi once or twice. Once or twice. Oh god, he's blocked me on Twitter. Ibermex Kendi blocked me on Twitter like a year ago. I never even interacted with him. I don't know why he would do such a thing. I can't imagine. Have I seen the Democrats' Ukraine letter, the one where they basically withdrew like they withdrew an anti-war letter or something like that? I heard about it quite briefly. Oh, we should have watched Jeremy's video. All right, well, maybe we can watch Jeremy's video at the end. If you guys have not seen Jeremy Kaufman's latest ad, I definitely recommend you watch it. It was Jeremy Kaufman's latest ad is his best ad yet. It's the most powerful one he's done by far. And I think you're all going to really appreciate it. So I would definitely recommend watching it if you haven't already. All right, guys, as a reminder, as this gets started, I will not be doing live commentary over it because I actually want to listen to it, but I will type my comments into chat and I will display them on screen, and I will be keeping an eye on the comments you make as well. And the same goes for like super chats. I'm not going to read them out loud. I'll display them on the screen. All right. Wait, why does it say live video is not started? Why haven't you started? There's a whole fucking countdown. See, they screwed it up. Oh. What's going on? This is what I'm talking about with like leftist technology. Oh, wait. There it is. Something's moving. No one touch anything. 0 viewers. I think they've done something because I just turned the volume on here, but I don't hear anything, so. Hopefully they get their shit. And this is probably pre-recorded on their end if we're honest about it. But I still want to see what they say. Oh, yes. Oh, look, it's my countdown music. You guys hear this? And we've got their chat open so we can see if people are chatting in. Their audio's not working.
Hello, everyone. We're so happy to have
We're
you
in.
here tonight. My name's Michelle Slaybaugh. I am a Black, queer woman, light-skinned, in a black shirt with clear glasses on. My pronouns are she, her, and I am here as the Director of Social Impact and Strategic Communications for SECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change.
Thanks, Michelle. My name is Beatrice Beckford. I go by she, her, y ella también pronouns. I'm a brown-skinned Black woman, Latina, wearing a gray shirt and black hair pulled up. It's wonderful to be here with y'all today. We have an exciting event for you. And so we're gonna kick us off with a bit of a video.
The education of our children is at stake, and it's time to rise up. With a new school year and politicians all across the country using critical race theory as a weapon, it is up to all of us to work together to champion progressive policies and practices for back to school. These policies and practices will promote safe, healthy, and equitable schools while harnessing the power of existing parent leaders to develop and strengthen new leaders. We need you in schools, on the school board, and showing up for school meetings. You are not alone. We can help you get there.
More than ever, our students are facing book bans, tearing down of comprehensive sex education programming, abuse of LGBTQIA+ students and teachers, and unprecedented expansion of police presence. And what is most needed but ignored is expanded mental health support for students living through inflation, a pandemic, and erosion of protections under the law.
There is hope. The way things are is not how they have to remain. Each and every one of us who has a child, knows a child, loves a child, can see the importance of seeing each and every one of them supported through adulthood. Each and every one of us knows that our legacies continue only as long as there is someone to move it forward. We are a collective of community organizations who are committed to change and liberation. Women's March, Moms Rising, Red, Wine, and Blue, the Education Trust, Parents Together, the Frontline, African American Policy Forum, Campaign for Our Shared Future, Supermajority, Missouri Equity Education Partnership, Color of Change, and SECUS. These organizations share a common goal of caring for the present so that there can be a future for us, a future for our children, and a future for their children we can't imagine yet. We know that there is no future if we are ruled by fear, by oppression, or by violence.
What will you leave with at the end of this campaign? A toolkit to help your success in your schools, podcasts and book recommendations, and a greater vision for our families, schools, and country. We deserve to have our wildest dreams of liberation realized, and we can do it for ourselves.
Showing up now, preparing yourselves for the work that needs to be done is exactly where you are supposed to be. Fear lives in places where there is no light, and each one of us has a light that is bright and shines even brighter when we are together. We are the change makers, the innovators, the dreamers, the seers. Come on in, get comfortable, and know that your presence here and the action you take now will make a difference. Our children need each of you, and we can rise together.
So welcome to Saving Our Schools, Activating Parents in the Age of CRT. This is the teach-in. We have an exciting event for you, full of keynote speakers, real stories from parents around the country on book bans, LGBTQIA attacks in schools, police in schools, and more. And at the end, there'll be a section where we'll be able to engage in conversation, Q&A with many of the panelists and you. So we're excited to have you there. That said, I'm going to kick us off with introducing our first keynote, the incomparable Kimberly Crenshaw. Dr. Crenshaw is the mother of intersectionality, critical race theory, and the Say Her Name campaign. She is the co-founder and executive director of the African American Policy Forum, the founder and executive director of the Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies at Columbia Law School, and is the Promise Institute professor at UCLA Law School, and is the Isidore and Seville Solbacher Professor at Columbia Law School. Dr. Crenshaw.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. I am extraordinarily honored to be part of this activation of parents across the country who care deeply about children having access to safe, honest, and inclusive education. We at the African American Policy Forum welcome this fight to save our schools from an extremely well-funded effort to undermine public education, public institutions, and democracy itself by weaponizing anti-racism. We have, in fact, just returned from a 15-state, 24-city tour where we sought to galvanize voters by drawing out the links between the attacks on our democracy and the attacks on anti-racist education. Now, the same forces that are attempting to gerrymander our democracy in order to rig our elections permanently are also attempting to gerrymander our history in order to undermine all of our aspirations for a truly equitable and inclusive society. This campaign arrives at a critical moment for our country and for the future of our children and our grandchildren. In 2020, millions of Americans in every state came together to demand police accountability after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Yet for some, the prospect of this growing consensus around the goals of a truly inclusive democracy resulted in a backlash. They attempted to dismantle this energy. Now, the wholesale attack on all manner of anti-racist history, concepts, tools has all been packaged together as a repudiation of what they call divisive concepts, most prominently among them being critical race theory. Now, having gentrified this entire terrain of anti-racist histories, prisms, practices, school boards and legislatures across the country sought to censor these so-called divisive concepts, concepts such as structural racism, implicit bias, disparate impact, even including the racist origins of our Constitution, and of course, the entire racial justice apparatus. Now, during our tour last week, voters and parents were astonished to learn exactly what has been taken out of their children's curriculum under the guise of this attack on divisive concepts. It includes classic books such as Beloved and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde, and books by newer writers like Ta-Nehisi Coates, Between the World and Me, Heavy by Casey Lehman, and All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. Even a book by Ruby Bridges, telling the story of her integrating New Orleans schools as a 6-year-old, has been attacked by these extremists. And beyond book banning, teachers have lost their jobs and licenses, principals have lost their schools, and those who remain have been chilled. And in the midst of all of this, it's our children who are left to suffer. What are they left with to interpret a world that remains stubbornly unequal, with a culture that is ill-equipped to excavate what exists beneath the surface to explain why? Some children are left with nothing other than the inference of their own inferiority, and others are left with a sense that they, as future citizens, are responsible for no one but themselves. The denial of our racist history has always been the Achilles heel of our democracy. This is why less than 10% of high school seniors know that slavery was the cause of the Civil War. It is also why on January 6th, all too many of our fellow Americans stormed the Capitol, convinced that something had been stolen from them that they had a right to exclusively think of as their own. That is the consequence of miseducation. If we want to steer away from this abyss, we have to repel the censoring of truthful history, We have to elevate inclusive narratives, and we have to curate values of diversity and equity across race, sex, gender identity, class, and ability. Now, as easy as that said, it's not easy to do. In fact, the efforts to fight back have been complicated by efforts to outrun our own shadow. We've tried to pivot. We've tried to avoid detection. We've tried to disavow CRT and a host of concepts that extremists want to paint us all with. The reality is that there are no legs that can carry us fast enough from what they don't want us teaching, because what they don't want us to teach is the true history and the current reality of this country. And that is what CRT is. Although many of you may not have heard of it until last year, it's a prism and it's a practice that for more than 30 years has been set to answer some basic questions. Why do inequalities like wealth, health, and security persist and even grow over time? And what role did law play in making inequality appear to be natural and unalterable, while colorblindness has been ramped up as a cover up to erase and deny all the hows and all the whys? These are the things that our kids want to know. And beyond that, for kids of color, these are the truths that they need to know. What extremists are trying to ban is simply survival knowledge, something we practice and teach our kids when we give them the talk, or when we place our hands at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, when we see the flashing lights in our rearview mirrors. To ban this knowledge about what is real and how we have long struggled to overcome it is to put us all in grave jeopardy. So this is why we must fight. As I've said for the last few weeks, there is no daylight between racial justice and democracy. Democracy was the entire reason that Brown found desegregation a constitutional right. It is why the effort to save what remains of those commitments have to be fought tooth and nail. Now, there's some bad news and there's some good news. The bad news is that the lies have done damage. They've traveled throughout the country before our truth got its boots on. The good news is that majorities are with us. Majorities support the teaching of our historical truths in our schools. Our own focus groups of Democratic voters tell us that when we define critical race theory, 82% of them are squarely with the teaching of critical race theory. And so are our children. We know too that once the fertile soil of racism has been tilled and seeds are planted, the branches of the poisonous vine extend to launch further attacks, from don't say gay and don't say trans to the current rise of anti-Semitism. So given this stark reality, it's vital that we push back against these anti-democratic forces and their attack on public education. The pursuit of knowledge, like freedom and democracy, is a constant struggle. It is not a one and done scenario. So together with our partner organizations, we stand in solidarity with you as parents to fight back against book bans and attacks on the knowledge necessary to sustain a truly inclusive democracy. We hope that tonight's event provides you with an in-depth understanding of how we got to this fraught moment. We also will hear personal stories from individual parents, because the human cost of these attacks is too often invisible. And finally, we hope you'll find the tools you need to take action in your local communities, whether you can give 5 minutes or you're ready to run for office. And most importantly, come November 8th, let them know what we think about banning books, about erasing our history, and about undermining our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for an incredible kickoff to this conversation. I am super excited to hear what else our speakers have to offer. And next, we are going to be moving into the conversation on book bans. And according to PEN America, who published a report in September of this year. During the 2021 and 2022 school year, 138 school districts in 32 states banned more than 2,500 books, robbing our youngest Americans the opportunity to learn through literature. And now we are going to hear a story from Sabrina Looney with the AAPF.
My name is Sabrina Looney, and I am a wife and mother of 4, and I live in Winsfield, Missouri. I got wind that there were some books that were being challenged. My son actually happens to be in English AP class, so this would directly affect him. There was too much of a coincidence of books that were targeting LGBTQ authors and that was targeting Black authors. And that was something that struck me because I was raised in a very poor area. And I understood the importance of having books to help me identify some of the things that I experienced within a school system where I didn't feel like I was seen. I talked to my son and I asked him what did he feel and what did he think? And he said he thought it was wrong. And I asked him, did he think it was wrong enough for him to do something about it? And he said yes. And that was my proud mama moment because I wanted to do something, but I needed him to also be an advocate for himself. And so we contacted the ACLU. I would say to anyone who is going to stand up for something that is wrong in your community, that is wrong in society, that you feel like it's wrong, you have to be prepared to finish the fight. You have to be prepared for whatever comes next. You have to show strength in whatever decision that you make. You have to show tenacity to finish it. It is not for the weak, but when my story is told, I'm confident in the fact that it would be that I stood up when something was wrong.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. The Truth Be Told campaign
It's
is
Sam!
a coordinated and strategic
I kicked
response
Sam's
to the
ass in
legislative
an
backlash and in the
CRT
teaching
debate.
of
I nailed
honest and
Sam right
inclusive
between the
American
eyes in a
history and
CRT
civics,
debate. He
in
couldn't
partnership
define
with
CRT for
activists,
90 full
advocates,
minutes
scholars,
after I
lawyers,
beamed
and
him between the
educators
eyes.
from across the country. Critical race theory is about teaching the honest and inclusive history of America and how injustices from the past create inequality for some people today. It is the best way to combat division and promote unity by equipping our children with the tools they need to thrive in a diverse world. Anti-CRT legislation seeks to chill and silence lessons on race, racism, sexism, and the truth about America's history in public school classrooms. Conservatives have been utilizing buzzwords like divisive concepts, parents' rights, age-appropriate instruction, and curriculum transparency to mask the true nature of their anti-racism legislative campaign. To understand the end goal, consider the recent boast in the New York Times by anti-CRT architect Christopher Rufo, when he declared, "We are right now preparing a strategy of laying siege to the institutions." The institutions here are the public schools, which he believes are waging war against American children and American families. Let's go back to fall of 2020 to answer the question, how did we get here? After viewing an interview with Christopher Rufo on Fox News, former President Trump issued an executive order banning diversity and inclusion training in the federal government. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, hosted a workshop in December of 2020 as part of its annual summit to advance model legislation with right-wing actors. The workshop, entitled Against Critical Theories Onslaught, was led by speakers from conservative think tanks. The summit was designed to provide a blueprint to expand Trump's executive order to the red wall, representing the 30 Republican trifectas held in red states. Although President Biden rescinded this order on his first day, the Red Wall campaign was already underway with states introducing and passing anti-CRT legislation. The chilling effects were immediately felt by educators nationwide. Kristen?
It bears noting that most of the ALEC-inspired bills passed initially mirrored the executive order language, focusing on banning ill-defined divisive concepts related to race and sex stereotyping or scapegoating to prevent highly subjective feelings of classroom discomfort, mainly among white children. A closer look at bills introduced in 2022 reveals that legislators are taking a more aggressive approach to attack CRT, being more explicit and transparent about what they seek to silence. Over the past 2 years, we've seen 89 bills specifically target critical race theory by name, while inaccurately defining what it is, and a total of 214 bills restricting teaching of race and sex-related concepts in schools, universities, and employee trainings. Another wave of anti-truth legislation includes bills that would mandate the instruction of highly partisan materials that are favorable to conservatives. This is a clear ploy to indoctrinate students by preventing them from accessing certain content, namely content that illuminates how systemic racism influences law and society, and force-feeding them content that cements a singular view. One key example is Florida's HB 395, an anti-communism bill championed by Governor DeSantis, which ironically mandates the instructions of how citizens suffered the suppression of speech under communist regimes. Mandatory punishment is another trend. These are specific required punishments for individuals or school districts found in violation of the law. One especially egregious example is Oklahoma's SB 1142 that sought to impose a $10,000 fine for school districts whose libraries contain books about gender identity. Finally, there's been an increase in surveillance state provisions, typically billed as parental bills of rights, demanding that teachers post all their lesson plans and readings online for parental view and consent. These are part of a broader trend of parental rights bills that have historically reared their ugly head in moments of racial progress in schools, like after Brown v. Board of Education.
Banning books that offend the sensibilities of concerned parents is an American tradition with a long history, and the coordinated war on books that we're seeing today is only the latest chapter in this story. In the early 1900s, the United Daughters of the Confederacy were banning textbooks they deemed unjust to the South. In the 1930s, there was a moral panic over U.S. history and civics textbooks labeled communist propaganda because they discussed poverty and economic inequality. These sorts of issues were revived forcefully with the Second Red Scare and McCarthyism of the 1950s, and the focus on racial issues in textbooks reached its highest point of the 20th century following the campaign of massive resistance to school desegregation throughout the 50s and 60s. By the 1970s, the reactionary script was pretty much set in stone, and what mattered was not the reality of the curricular or textbook content, but the outrage and fear of paranoid white parents. In Kanawha County, West Virginia in 1974, white parents reacted with violent rage to false rumors about the contents of newly approved textbooks, as conservative school board members warned that the books were full of anti-Christian, anti-American, anti-white propaganda and indoctrination. But it's important to recognize that the resistance to CRT has opened up the floodgates for a cornucopia of concerns about all sorts of books authored by or for members of marginalized communities. In October, Texas legislator Matt Krause sent out a demand to all school districts to investigate a list of over 800 books in their curricula, classrooms, and libraries. Analysis showed that more than 60% of the books on that list had to do with matters related to LGBTQ topics, and about 20% touched on transgender issues or featured a trans character. PEN America has collated an index of school book bans that offers a snapshot of the trend. Their index lists 2,532 instances of books being banned in over 100 school districts in 32 states between July 2021 and June 2022. These districts represent over 5,000 schools with a combined enrollment of over 4 million students. Some of the most common themes among the banned books are those that include prominent LGBTQ characters or characters of color, address topics involving race and racism or LGBTQ issues, or have themes related to civil rights and activism. Dozens of even children's books have been banned, including biographies of Rosa Parks, Ruby Bridges, and Martin Luther King Jr. The descent into fascism in Nazi Germany included numerous book burnings. The line between the Republican Party today and fascism, if it exists, is increasingly difficult to identify, as we can see from this picture side by side. This is from Tennessee, led by a Republican preacher. There were book burnings this year.
God damn it.
And just as in Nazi Germany, today's fascistic anti-democratic movement is fueled by an alliance between an authoritarian white supremacist political party and conservative elites who see public organizing and liberal democracy as threats to their wealth and power.
Some of you might be wondering, why target critical race theory and why now? Well, it's important to note that we are facing attacks on multiracial democracy, public education, and racial and social justice because we have been winning in the court of public opinion and on the streets to demand a more just society. From the Manhattan Institute to the Heritage Foundation, from Fox News to the State Policy Network, the architects of right-wing infrastructure realized how they were facing a serious dilemma that became even more apparent after the 2020 elections, when Democrats won back control of the Senate following an incredible intersectional activation that resulted in an upset win in Georgia. As a result, one nagging challenge that right-wing operatives with the school privatization agenda had was to figure out how to get white parents to disinvest in their public schools, a formidable challenge because of the way that white supremacy operates. Because of white flight and the exclusionary and state-supported development, policing, and protection of white neighborhoods, suburban parents have been generally happy and satisfied with their public schools and public school teachers. That's why a fear-mongering campaign centered on race was so essential to turning around both the racial reckoning momentum among suburban white voters and their support for public schools. Enter the disinformation campaign against critical race theory. This hit job had to be about race, it had to have a strong emotional appeal, and it had to invoke fear with lies about the real state of things to make inroads among white suburban parents who were moved during the summer of racial reckoning to demand racial justice. At AAPF, we have been saying all along that a defensive message like critical race theory is not taught in public schools is not only ineffective, it's counterproductive. It unintentionally endorses anti-CRT legislation by treating critical race theory and systemic injustices as things that don't belong in public schools. And once we accept that premise, it's just a game of what falls inside or outside of the boundaries of CRT. This allows for distancing and disavowals to take center stage instead of affirming the importance of these essential classroom conversations. At some point, we must stand up for the importance of teaching about systemic racism and related forms of structural subordination by using the most powerful anti-racist tool that we have in our toolbox, and that is critical race theory. And so we really want to emphasize that even though the challenges ahead of us may appear stark, there has been considerable resistance. And we are thankful, for example, for the lawsuits filed against Oklahoma, New Hampshire, and Florida's backlash laws by the ACLU, LDF, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, NEA, and the AFT. Students and youth are organizing, and the groups sponsoring this event are hard at work on many initiatives. You can join AAPF tomorrow at 7 Eastern for our virtual event, Books Unbanned, From Freedom Writers to Freedom Readers, a cross-country call to action. You can find the link for free registration in the chat. So we thank you all for your attention, for helping us to fight back against these anti-CRT anti-truth movements fueling book bans across the country.
Thank you so very much to the AAPF team for that incredible presentation. In addition to book bans, our attacks on our schools and our children have included harmful attacks on our LGBTQIA students, as well as attacks on comprehensive sex education. Next, we'll hear from a parent, Lisette Trujillo, and as well as representatives from CICAS and Campaign from Our Shared Future, who will help us understand how we can push back.
It is so important for students to have access to inclusive, medically accurate, scientifically researched sex ed. As a mother living in Arizona, I cannot tell you how harmful it is to not allow students to have access to this very important life-saving information. It teaches kids how to be responsible for themselves and their choices, how to take care of their bodies, and what consent actually means. The more tools we give our children and our students, the better off they are and the better our communities are. So please join CICAS and this incredible partnership in helping champion inclusive sex ed in schools across the country.
Thank you so much. Dr. Heather, would you like to go ahead and tell us about the work that you all are doing?
Good evening. It's so good to be in community. My name is Heather Harding, and I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign for Our Shared Future. And we're a nonpartisan common ground effort founded on the principle that every child, regardless of their background, deserves access to a high quality, age appropriate education. And one of the things, as I listen to the speakers and the videos and the parents, that's so important to underscore here is that respectful collaboration between families and teachers is really the only way that we can ensure that our children have the best educational environments. Unfortunately, out of touch and career-driven politicians have really hijacked our nation's schools and school boards. They've launched, as you've heard, a full-out attack on our kids' education. And sadly, the children most often targeted and attacked by these political extremists are some of our most vulnerable. From the hateful legislation, like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, to widespread discriminatory book banning, LGBTQ youth and families have repeatedly found themselves in the political crosshairs. In fact, in 2022, we tracked 45 state-level education bills aimed at weakening protections for LGBTQ youth and otherwise promoting a culture of hostility for the most vulnerable, but for all kids. It's become increasingly clear that politicians have no plans of letting up these attacks. It's part of what I've come to call the Medusa head attack on public education that runs the gamut of issues, but again, undermines trust between our families, students, and their educators. All parents, no matter where we come from, we want our kids to be welcomed into the school environment so they can learn and grow. For me, family is everything. When I see my two teenagers, I see hope and the future, a world of possibilities. But obviously, our politicians don't see any of that. They are using them as pawns in a political game. To make matters worse, LGBTQ students are facing harassment and bullying at higher rates in their peers because of this environment that's being stoked. In 2022, the Trevor Project reported out a survey. The majority of LGBTQ youth in America are experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression. And in this moment where we're just coming out of a pandemic, the last thing that we need is for adults to look the other way, or worse, play an active role in creating a toxic school environment. Just earlier today, I read a story about a young man in Florida, Xander Morris, who was selected to speak at his high school graduation as class president, but was preemptively silenced due to the opposition to Ron DeSantis's Don't Say Gay bill. As an out gay student, Xander felt it was his responsibility to stand up to the governor's efforts to disenfranchise and erase LGBTQ students and families from Florida schools. Sadly, but unsurprisingly, the politicians in his school district caught wind of his activism and stepped in to prevent him from speaking his mind. They threatened to stop the entire graduation ceremony, which impinges on his rights as a citizen. But students like Xander have a strong resolve in the face of adversity. He, along with some of his peers, became plaintiffs in the lawsuit against the state of Florida. And I'm quoting him. He says, "I am the first openly gay class president in my school's history. This censorship seems to show that they want me to be the last." We cannot stand down, especially as parents. We have a responsibility to protect all of our children. These kids are working hard to get to know each other across lines of difference, and their educators are trying to prepare them to succeed. We need to support those efforts. We need to make sure that we are in partnership. All over the country, the threat of career-motivated politicians infiltrating our school boards and becoming more prevalent is real. These efforts to erase history, which have been well shared prior to my talking, are part of America's complicated racial past. We can have and do have a great country, and we need for it to get better. So we at the Campaign for Our Shared Future are calling on you as parents and allies to help center the voices and experiences of LGBT community and call out unequivocally these dangerous attacks on their rights and their safety. Because if our most vulnerable children aren't safe, none of our children are safe. By speaking out at school board meetings, voting in your school board elections, and running for office when you get the call to service, together we can ensure that our public schools remain places where every child can thrive. To learn more about the challenges that children and families are currently facing, please visit campaignforourSharedFuture.org for resources and support. Thank you to all of the partners I'm joining here today in the fight for more inclusive schools, and to you, the families and communities that make the work possible.
Thank you, Dr. Harding, for that incredible information. I'm now going to take a couple minutes as the Director of Social Impact and Strategic Communications for SECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change. I'm here to talk about sex education legislation and policy. SECUS, Sex Ed for Social Change, has served as the nation's voice for sex education since 1964. Asserting that sexuality is a fundamental part of being human, one that is worthy of dignity and respect. Through our advocacy, policy, and coalition building, SECUS advances sex education as a vehicle for social change, where all people receive sex education, are affirmed in their identities, and have the power to make decisions about their own health, pleasure, and wholeness. But let's talk about the real tea of 2022. SECUS has tracked about 127 bills that were anti-LGBTQAI+, including restrictions on classroom discussions of sexual orientation and gender, transgender youth sports bans, gender-affirming care bans, and other bills that would lead to hostile school environments for our LGBTQAI+ youth. We saw a dramatic 413% increase in divisive concept bills that Kimberly Crenshaw mentioned earlier, that have come into being introduced this year alone. Often the bills that we're seeing are copycat bills. And this is why this is important for everyone who is watching. These are the same exact or almost same exact language from previous bills that we are seeing pop up in states and districts all across the country. And we want to inform you about who these individuals are, because despite America's large-scale support of teaching truth teaching CRT, teaching sex education in the classroom, our youngest Americans are at risk because there are politicians out there who do not mind compromising their safety to build their base and garnish capital for their campaigns. I want to really stress how sex education has been a part of Americans' history since 1919. It was then that the US Department of Labor and Children Bureau released a report suggesting that sex education was vital for the development of youth. In 1920, sex education was introduced into high schools. 1930, the US Office of Education published its first sex education materials and starts to train teachers. In the 30s and 40s, human sexuality courses appeared in colleges. In 1964, as mentioned, SECUS was developed. And in 1968, the US Department of Education gives NYU a grant to develop graduate programs for training in sex education. Then the 60s and 70s hit, and sex education became politicized. And why this is important is because the same playbook that we are seeing used to create book bans, to create divisive and dangerous legislation for anti-trans youth and anti-LGBTQ ideologies is the same exact rhetoric that we saw in the 60s and 70s when sex education became politicized. It is important to recognize that there are over 3 decades of research that build a case for sex education, asserting that the effectiveness of sex education based on updated national sex education standards are ones that can result in improvements in knowledge and attitudes towards dating violence and intimate partner violence by reducing harmful beliefs and stigma and sexist attitudes. Sex education improves understanding around physical boundaries and healthy relationships. Sex education improves social and emotional learning and increases bystander self-efficacy. These studies show that no matter where we live or who we love, most of us want our young people to receive relationships and sexuality educations at schools. And that includes parents. We know that when young people have the support of well-trained educators in learning about themselves and their boundaries, they do better, not only in their personal lives, but also academic achievements elevate, right? But there are certain politicians that are trying to hold on to power by waging a war on our kids. They are more willing to leave our kids vulnerable and trample the rights of the majority of this country if it helps them raise money for their base. We see how they are trying to erase Black history from our curriculum through their efforts on book bans and other oppositions to public school relationships and sexuality education, removals of CRT concepts, as well as very dangerous initiatives to reduce access and opportunities for our LGBTQAI+ students. But guess what? We can fight back. These far-right extremists have continued to benefit from the investment in not protecting our young people, but by protecting a privileged social system that will continue to push forth white supremacist ideas and far-right ideologies that are not in alignment with what makes this country great, which is diversity. But we must recognize who these individuals are by naming them. The most well-known big 3 are the Family Policy Alliance, the Heritage Foundation, and the Alliance Defending Freedom. The extremist movement behind these attacks on diversities of our public school systems is backed by major donors. These are not grassroots efforts. We really want to continue to ask for your support in identifying ways you can get involved. You can do that by going to seekis.org and signing up to be a part of our newsletters so you can get real-time action alerts in your area to be able to take action, write your local congressperson and let them know. I also invite you to check out SECUS's state legislative policy reports that allow you to understand where your state legislation sits around sex education. And finally, I want to invite you to check out educateus.org. That is SECUS's C4 sister organization that can give you a full download of candidates that are supporting sex education and reproductive rights on the ballots this year. I want to remind you that while this is always and often tiring and overwhelming, there are organizations that are here to help. Get involved in whatever level you can and know that we are here fighting for you. And at this time, I am going to go ahead and introduce our next conversation, which is about how do we create safe environments in our schools and the level of policing that is currently happening. So I'd like to introduce a parent story from Moms Rising.
Hi, my name's Erica, and I'm here to tell you, don't think this could never happen to you. Don't think that just by being involved in with your child in their education, having all the mental health systems working with you, don't think that it can't be your child. I have a 14-year-old child who has special needs that had everything in place. I'm actively involved. I'm there every step of the way. And I still watched our school systems bring in police against him. I now have a child who is afraid to leave the house, who is scared of the police, who's scared of teachers, and now has PTSD from going to school and giving it his all.
So again, I just want to say how wonderful it is to be here with you all virtually. The outpouring of interest and support for this event has been deeply inspiring. As I share this section on school health and safety, I would love for folks to be thinking about what makes you feel safe and supported. This question is an important starting place for how we can envision and create a climate in our schools that supports students and creates a culture of safety that centers the needs of children and young people. Please feel free to add your reflections, your ideas, your thoughts in the comment section. Now more than ever, young people, and specifically school-aged children, need support. Our country is experiencing an urgent mental health crisis. In 2019, more than 1 in 3 high school students said they experienced persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness, and 1 in 5 students seriously considered suicide. Emergency rooms across the country saw a significant increase in the number of ER visits for mental health reasons in young people. While this crisis isn't new, a persistent lack of investments in school-based mental health resources on top of a pandemic has made it exponentially worse. Young people who experience anxiousness, depression, and worse are struggling, and their mental health challenges can be incredibly overwhelming for parents and educators to navigate. Support and safety go hand in hand, and too many of our schools lack the resources to provide meaningful support. School counselors, nurses, social workers, and school psychologists are often the first to see children who are sick, stressed, or traumatized, particularly for low-income school districts. The benefits of investing in mental health services in schools goes above and beyond the immediate supports that children and young people get when they engage in these services. These same schools with these services and support see better attendance rates, better academic achievement, and higher graduation rates, as well as low rates of suspensions, expulsions, and other disciplinary incidents. Support and safety go hand in hand, and data shows us that the presence of school-based mental health providers not only improves outcomes for students, but can improve overall school safety. The benefit of investing in school mental health supports is clear. So you would think it would make sense for school boards, principals, government leaders, and elected officials to be using every available resource to increase access to school-based health and mental health professionals. But instead, what's happening is funding for police and schools has been on the rise on top of a national youth mental health crisis. And while schools face critical shortages of counselors, nurses, psychologists, school social workers, and teachers, even schools offering some mental health services are terribly understaffed. Nationally, it's recommended that at least one counselor and one social worker for every 250 students, at least one nurse per 750 students, and one psychologist for every 700 students. These staffing recommendations are a minimum requirement. Despite that, and as this map depicts, the 90% of students are in schools that don't meet these standards, and in schools with a significant lack of health and mental health support staff, law enforcement presence is increasing. Many states reported 2 to 3 times as many police officers in schools as social workers, and several states reported more police officers in schools than nurses. This is an issue affecting millions of students across the country. That's 14 million students in schools with police, but no counselor, no nurse, psychologist, or social worker. That breaks down to 1.7 million students in schools with police but no counselors, 3 million students in schools with police but no nurses, 6 million students in schools with police but no school psychologists, and 10 million students in schools with police but no social workers. What this looks like in our schools is parents like Erica seeing their kids experience harm versus help. And just to give an example, there are now more law enforcement officers in Florida's K-12 schools than there are nurses. And the arrests of students have jumped in the 2 years since legislators passed a law requiring that every school deploy a police officer and an armed school employee. You may have remembered the Give a Teacher a Gun effort. This more police, more guns approach is not working. And these images show the Orlando Police Department escorting a 6-year-old away after arresting them at their school. And then there's Kaya, a 6-year-old who, with her grandmother here. Kaya's tiny wrists were zip tied and she was escorted out of her school, taken into custody after she reportedly threw a temper tantrum. The temper tantrum had been triggered by tiredness because of her sleep apnea, a condition the school was well aware of that made her irritable that day. As a result of the arrest, Kaya developed extreme separation anxiety and wakes up screaming with night terrors. These stories are not the only ones, and they're happening across the country. During the 2018 to 2019 school year, the number of children and young people arrested in Florida increased 8%, even though communities around the schools saw a 12% decline in the number of young people arrested. Police officers arrested elementary-age kids 345 times. That includes arrests of a 5-year-old and 5 arrests of 6-year-olds in the same year. School safety it's a shared responsibility. We know what works, and it's not more of the same. Investing in school-based mental health supports helps kids, particularly the most vulnerable, while continuing to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into policing in schools has not made our schools any safer, and instead has actually created more harms. The reality is that together we can change this, and it starts by taking action, speaking out, signing petitions, and advocating for resources for student mental health supports. It means showing up at school board meetings, writing or calling your elected officials and educating them on the importance of school-based mental health supports and the mental health crisis that our children and families are navigating. Additionally, Police and schools are funded in a number of ways, but ultimately they're funded by us. They're funded by you through your local, state, and federal taxes. And the people you elect, the people we elect, Congress, governors, mayors, city council, and even school boards, make funding decisions on our behalf, on your behalf, from year to year, which means you can help influence how your elected representative distributes and redistributes public school funds. You can push for budget proposals that invest funds into what students really need instead of pouring money needlessly into more police in our schools. You can advocate for and tell your legislators to support bills like the Counseling Not Criminalization Act, which would provide $5 billion in new grant funding to help schools hire more counselors, social workers, behavioral health professionals, and to help school districts implement services in schools that create a positive and safe climate for all students. Together, we can advocate for the type of safe and supportive school environments where all children can learn, grow, flourish, and thrive. So let's continue this conversation in our homes, in our schools, and in our communities. I mean, let's do it everywhere. Let's have this conversation everywhere. Because when we know better, we can dream bigger, we can make meaningful change in the lives of our children, and ultimately, we can do better as a society. Thank you.
Learning is a tender thing, worthy.
Wonderful. Are y'all fired up? I know I am, and I hope that you are too. I hope that the information that you have seen thus far in this presentation has got your biscuits burning and you are ready to take action now by getting involved with your local school board efforts. And now we are going to talk about how do you get involved in school board? And how do I run for a school board office? And remember, it doesn't matter if you have kids in a school district or not. If you live in a school district, you still have the right to be a part of the school board efforts in your community. And I encourage you to do so. Homeowners insurance would do the same thing. So now I'm going to throw it to our next video, which is about getting involved in local school board elections.
My name is Nidhi Satyani, and I am a school board member in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I chose to run for office a year ago because I believe in our public schools. Our public schools are the one place where everyone, regardless of identity, regardless of ability, regardless of socioeconomic differences, come together with a shared goal of becoming informed citizens, citizens who care about the welfare and dignity of others. And that's the heart of a democracy, and I believe in democratic societies. Our nation is at a fork in the road. Will we continue to honor the dignity of everyone? Will we empower our teachers to teach hard things? Will we challenge and support our students to reach a high bar? I love my district, and I believe in our students, and I know they will go out and change the world. I'm also not naive enough to believe that one suburb of Columbus, Ohio can do it alone. So I'm asking you to please join me. Run for office. It's hard, and you can do it, and it is really worth it. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Julie Womack. I am the Chief Organizing Officer for Red, Wine, and Blue. We are a national organization that channels the power of suburban women to bring change to their communities, to their suburbs, just one suburb at a time. And we focus a lot on school issues because it's so important to our communities. High quality education, good schools for our kids, accurate education in our schools. So I am really thrilled to be connected to the two women who are here with me. You probably recognize Nidhi Santiani, who just spoke in the video, and I'm really also happy to bring on Angela Abram. Both of these women have stepped up and taken that step of running for school board, and happy to announce that they were elected to their school board. So I just really wanted them to take some time to speak to you, about what it takes to run for school board. What do you need to know? So if you're a parent sitting out there right now listening, thinking, I could do that. I'm going to just start, since you already heard from Needy on the video, I'm going to start with Angela. Angela, could you just kind of tell everybody who's listening, what was it that made you decide I am going to step up and run for school board?
Well, good evening. One of the reasons I decided to run for school board was because my children were about to leave our high school, and I still wanted to continue to give back to my community. I had the opportunity to observe multiple school members in the community, and I just felt that it was something that I could also do to further my public service in the community.
That's great. I'd like to hear from both of you, and Needy, I will switch back over to you. So if you're a parent sitting out there right now and you're like, ooh, I've never run for office, I don't even know how to get started with that, what is the first step you suggest they take? How do they get that? How do they get that training to run a campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is definitely a thought I had about 2 years ago. And there are so many resources out there. Most of them are free. There are some that you can pay for that will really give you the tools that you need to create a campaign plan, which is basically a business plan for your campaign. Angela and I actually met through a local Ohio-based organization called Lead Ohio. But there are organizations all over the country that will give you the training that you need, that will teach you how to fundraise, that will teach you how to knock on doors, that will teach you how to hone your message, that will teach you how to prepare for a debate. All the different parts of a campaign can be taught and can be learned, and there are organizations who will support you.
Angela, anything to add to that? Anything that you thought was super helpful in terms of getting training or in preparing for that run for school board?
Certainly, I was given pretty much like a syllabus. This is what you need to do first. This is what you need to do next. And I was taught how to kind of back plan from the election date all the way to whatever my current calendar date was, and be able to make sure that I was staying on target with all of the objectives that we needed to complete. So we certainly did learn a lot in our Ohio based programming. And I know there are some national programs that are through certain political parties. So, if a person is of a certain party, they can certainly look that up from the National Training Center aspect. So those are the things I do.
I know that I've worked with groups like Lead, Emerge, Run for Something if you're on the younger side. I think if you're under 40 for Run for Something. Obviously, political parties also do that training. So there are definitely so many avenues to take. How did you guys go about, and I'll go back to you, Needy. How did you go about, obviously you got this training and then you're like, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to do this. What was the first steps that you took, and how do you build a campaign team? Because you really can't do this alone, especially as busy moms and community members, you need help.
Yeah, so the first thing in Ohio is to file what we call a designation of treasurer form, which I think is similar in many states. And that officially makes you someone who is allowed to collect money. And that's really the first step. So you have to find someone who can be your treasurer. And this can be anyone. I know a lot of campaign members or a lot of candidates who will use a spouse or even themselves as their treasurer initially. I don't recommend that through the whole campaign, but initially, if you need to be your own treasurer, that's totally fine. You can always change that later. But really just someone who's pretty good with numbers. It's not a lot of complicated math, right? There's contributions, there's expenses. You just got to keep track of it. And so just someone who's willing to stay on top of the individual expenses and contributions. And then from there, you really grow your team. Most all of my campaign team members were other moms in the district. Some I had met through the PTO, some I had met through my kids' soccer teams, just other people who have skills that could complement my own skills in getting that campaign off the ground.
Angela, what about you? How did you grow your team, and what do you think were the most important things you did to get started?
Well, after you get your treasurer form filled out and you go and get those signatures on your petition, it allows you to kind of get out there and knock on doors, and it allows you to interact with people that you're going to go see them because you know that they want to support you in this endeavor. So then you can kind of find out where their skill sets are, and then you can kind of form your team, because there are some people who will very happily go and knock on doors for you, but there'll be other people who will only very happily make a phone call for you. And then some people will just really prefer to write a check. So it really just depends on that group of people that you interact with. And, you know, of course, one person knows another person. And so before you know it, you're able to kind of get that nice collective. And then also, if you're running on a slate or with other candidates, you know, they certainly share information amongst each other. So you can certainly find out, well, you know, if I need this type of information, who should I go to? You know, so you become just part of a network, and then you can kind of really grow your campaign through that network.
Needy, I know you mentioned the treasurer being the first most important thing that or person that you need to find. What other vital kind of people do you need on a campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on what your own skill set is, right? So if you're really good with social media and marketing, then you probably don't need somebody who's running that for you. I'm not particularly good with that, and so finding people to help me with the social media and marketing piece of it was good. And then in our community, because I'm a relatively new member of our community. I lived here 6 years when I started my campaign, and this is an old community where people live here for generations. So for me, it was really important that we were connecting with people on an individual basis. And so we had a lot of house parties, kind of meet and greet type things. And so one of my friends was just in charge of scheduling those and making sure they had what they needed for the house party. So just knowing your community and what are the ways in which people will learn about you and they'll trust you as someone who is one of their own will dictate who you invite to be on your team.
Angela, same question, like, you know, who do you think is vital? And then maybe you can just share with us too, you know, your best advice to somebody that is thinking about doing this, considering it, even if it's just a little, you know, tiny thought in the back of their head right now. What advice would you give them in terms of getting started and taking that next step and actually running?
Well, certainly, first thing I would recommend is go to your school board meetings. Be involved. If you are not a parent of a child in the district, then definitely make sure you're abreast of what the current issues are in your community. A city is only as strong as its school district, and a school district is only as strong as a city. So also make yourself aware of what's happening in your city or your township. And, you know,
Hey guys. Hey. I'm back. I'm sorry. Internet just glitched at my house. So hang on. Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second to get it back up. Sorry guys. My whole computer is like restarting right now. Like there's like 8,000 like bells and fucking whistles going off. Hang on. I'm trying to get it back up. Hang on. Hang on. So sorry. If it means anything to anyone, I shouted very loudly when everything fucking glitched, and I was like, "No!" All right, hang on. Oh shit. Sorry. Okay, we're in for Kendi. We made it back. As long as my internet fucking starts fucking working now.
Dr. Ibrahim X. Kendi.
Ah, just in time.
The Education Trust, Parents Together, and the African American Policy Forum. I've been saying for
Just
months
in time.
now that
Huh.
in order to combat those who are organizing against the truth, those who are organizing against our ability to teach young people to be anti-racist, those who are organizing and vilifying critical race theory, that we have to organize. We have to out-organize them. We have to gain and move into positions of power. And so I'm just excited that these organizations would come together for this forum. And of course, I am elated to hear, of course, that Kimberly Crenshaw is speaking. And I just wanted to say a few words to the group, to everyone. And I think the first and most important thing that I want to convey is that, as I write about in my recent book, How to Raise an Anti-Racist, we're either raising our children to be racist or raising them to be anti-racist. We're either raising them to recognize that skin color is as irrelevant, as the colors of the clothes that we're wearing, or we're raising them to attach dark skin or lighter skin to positive and negative qualities. We're either raising our kids to recognize that the inequality and inequities that they see between darker people and lighter people are the result of bad people or bad policy. We're either raising our children to be racist or anti-racist. And just like with anything else, like teaching our kids to share, teaching our kids to be kind, teaching our kids to do the right thing, we have to actively raise our kids to be anti-racist. And indeed, it's never too early to start. Unfortunately, our kids are internalizing ideas that attach negative qualities to particularly people with darker skin before they are articulating it, before they can even articulate it. Some studies show that it's as early as 3 years old, but our kids don't really start talking about or expressing their ideas about race until they're more 5 or 6 or 7 years old. And studies show that when our kids start asking questions or expressing their ideas, the first response and even lesson that they receive from parents and teachers and other caregivers is that you don't talk about that. And so they learn to not talk about race and racism, as opposed to us as parents and teachers providing a very safe space for them to share what they think, for us to know what they think, for us to ensure that we're orienting their thinking towards racial equality and towards justice for all. And so I'm on a mission, obviously, to provide caregivers with the tools to be able to engage in these conversations and even to create the environmental conditions where our kids can be raised to be anti-racist. I write about, in How to Raise an Anti-Racist, how it's important for us to child-proof our homes, literally, to give.
The freeze is on their end, not on mine. I just want to confirm that. It's on their end. It's not on mine. Let me reload.
The environmental
There we go.
conditions where our kids can be raised to be anti-racist. I write about.
What the hell? This is on their end, guys. This is not on my end. I'm pretty sure it's not on my end. It just keeps reloading.
The environmental conditions where our kids can be raised to be anti-racist. I write about.
This is on their end. Someone broke something. Yeah, they've lost viewers. There's only 40 people on their end watching right now.
As it is for us. They don't have to go through
Their views
unlearning
are tanking.
through our parenting. Through
There's
our
more people
nurturing,
watching this stream than are watching
racial
their stream.
equality, the beauty that is the human rainbow where they can see themselves. And so obviously we who are committed to ensuring all of our
There it goes again. Wow.
children do not think that there's something as it is for us. They don't have to go curriculums
Kendi
from
burst the
libraries,
internet.
books about people of color and books about racism, which is then resulting in our kids.
Sam, I don't allow this
communities
language
where there's
on the
all
channel.
these racial
Please do not
disparities,
use
where-
this language
where
on the
white
channel.
people have more, and they are literally not being taught why that's the case.
No.
And they're literally
Anyone who
seeing
uses
white
the
people
term
as more in the
anti-white
curriculum.
again will be banned from this channel, and I'm not
And then
fucking
the
around.
people who are
Anyone who uses the term anti-white will be banned from this
creating
channel,
those conditions, both in
and
our
I'm not
community
screwing
and
around.
both in
You
our
try me, you
schools,
see what
are
happens.
imagining themselves as not racist and imagining themselves as seeking to protect our children.
See, it's good that Kendi's freezing. I get to yell at the chat. I haven't yelled at the chat in a minute. Kendi is still broken.
Which is then resulting in our kids who are living in communities where there's all
God damn it. Well, at least it's not me. My internet may have dropped for a second, but at least it's not me this time. This is on their end.
wrong with her because of the color of her skin. To protect that white boy is to teach him that he is special.
God damn it! What is wrong with these people? Marxists never know how to use technology. Never.
Wrong with her because of the color of her skin. To protect that white boy is to teach him that he is special when he is nice and when he shares, but he's not special because he's white. And indeed,
Sorry, guys. I cannot control technical difficulties on their end. Yeah, people are saying in the chat, too, that it keeps freezing for them. Oh, we're having trouble playing this video. There it goes. Well, maybe they'll come back. We'll give them a second and maybe it'll come back. People in the chat on their end are complaining there's only 17 people watching now. Oh, what a shame, isn't it? Isn't it a shame that their little presentation got so How much money do you think they paid Ibram X. Kendi for that recorded speech that just tanked their entire presentation? They probably paid him 5 figures for that recorded speech. I mean, I don't think they paid him more than 5 figures, but they probably paid him in a low 5 figures for a recorded speech for like 15 minutes. Well, we'll wait here to see if this reloads, guys. I apologize that my internet dropped out, but like this is not my problem. This is legitimately their problem. My internet's back up and running now. I don't know what the hell happened. But I do just want to say, so let's see. So here, I want to talk about the book banning shit for a second because I warned. Hang on, I've got it up on my screen. If it comes back up again, I'll bring it back up. But to kind of wrap up, because they're having some technical difficulties on their end. It's not even working anymore. So I guess that's all we're gonna have for tonight, guys. That was Spy Stream. But I want to just take a second to talk about the book banning stuff. Because the argument that I'm going to hear from conservatives is, we're not trying to ban books. We're just trying to get graphic books out of libraries. Here's the problem. When Moms for Liberty first started this book banning shit, and Moms for Liberty went on CNN talking about banning Ruby Bridges, I made a video on this channel in which I called them out. It is still on this channel today, in which I said, if you insist on doing this book banning bullshit, it is going to backfire on all of us. Cut it out. And do you know what happened on that video? I got a metric F ton of conservative and you're not the person I thought you were. I'm unsubscribing and how dare you? And we would never ban books. We just want them removed from I got a metric ton of conservative for taking this position. But guess what? I was 100% correct. $2 super chat tip jar. The Carlin is right tip jar. I was 100% correct that the book banning bullshit would be used against all of us. Because now, what is the number one argument that the woke left uses against people who do not like critical race theory? They just want to ban books. They're book banners. They want to ban books about children. They want to ban books about Martin Luther King. They want to ban books. That is their number one argument. It was always a stupid strategy. And you know what the right sucks at? The right sucks at pointing out the hypocrisy when the left does this, because it is true that the left tries to ban books too. But it doesn't even matter, because the left goes on the attack. They use the argument against all of us, not just the people who are arguing for banning the books, because I have never once argued to ban books or to take books out of libraries or to take books out of classrooms or any of those things. What I have argued is that we need to make it culturally unacceptable for those books to ever be introduced in the first place. That's not the same thing. The book banning bullshit was always going to be a slippery slope, because here's the other thing that happens with the book banning stuff is what conservatives do is they don't just stop with saying we need to get genderqueer out of libraries. It's never just that. It is never just that. It is always, we need to get genderqueer out of libraries and we need to replace it with the Bible. And then that gives them another piece of ammunition. There ain't gonna be no red wave, Jason. You can wish upon a star, but it ain't gonna be no red wave. And it's because of this bullshit. It is because of this bullshit. Conservatives have got to stop with the book banning nonsense. They have got to stop, because the books are a complete and total distraction. If you get that one book that you really hate out of the school library or out of the classroom, you're going to feel really, really good. You're going to feel proud of yourself for about 3.5 seconds until they introduce new books that are just going to replace it. And guess what? The book banning bullshit is not solving anything, because the books in the libraries and the books in the classroom are the very least of the problems that we are dealing with. It is a complete and total distraction. It is a complete and total distraction. Because the real thing that people should be looking at is, what are they doing with these equity offices that they're building up? How about all these staffs that are being hired to fill these equity offices? And no, Casey, I disagree with this. Absolutely not. This is not going to work. This was never going to work, because it comes across as book banning. It is a bad idea. It is a slippery slope. It will 100% of the time be used against all of us, and it won't even solve any of the problems in the first place. We listened tonight to 45 minutes of them talking about how we're all just evil people who want to ban books. And that's not the first time they've done that. They've been doing this for the last year and a half, ever since Moms for Liberty started this bullshit in Tennessee. The things that people need to be paying attention to are the diversity and equity offices that are being started and fully staffed at the district level. They need to be paying attention to the teacher professional development trainings. They need to be paying attention to social emotional learning getting integrated into classroom curriculum. They need to be paying attention to equity getting integrated into classroom curriculum. The smartest thing that the woke left could continue to do is to continue to introduce sexually explicit books in the classroom or in libraries. You want to know why? Because that's going to distract the right from every single thing that's important. It's like when you're watching a magic show and there's a little twirly assistant over here, like a thin blonde twirly assistant that's distracting you because you know where the real magic is happening? The real magic is happening over here, but they don't want you to see it. So they're distracting you with a thin blonde assistant twirling around in a short skirt. That is what conservatives are like. They're so distracted by the thin blonde assistant twirling around in the short skirt that they don't pay attention that the real trick is going on over here. Every time you focus on the book banning bullshit, you're watching the thin blonde girl in the twirly costume that is designed to distract you from the real magic that's going on over here. For every book you get pulled out of schools, they're going to add 3 more. And then they're going to add 3 more after that. And then they're going to add 3 more after that because they know that you're easily distracted and they don't care about the books. The books were never the issue. What is important is that they are integrating everything they are doing into the structure. They are integrating it into policy. They are trying to make it so it can never be undone. And they are winning. They are winning. And they're winning because conservatives are distracted by the blonde, thin, twirly woman that is designed to distract them in the form of fucking genderqueer. And then if you tell conservatives, no, don't do this. Don't be distracted by the blonde, twirly woman, they cry and they whine and they complain and they say, we're not banning books, but they are. And then they go, well, maybe we should replace it with the Bible instead. That'll fix everything. And all the while this is going on, the left is still doing the magic trick over here, and no one's paying attention to it. No one's paying attention to it because they're all looking over here, but the real magic's happening over here. This is why they're winning. That's why they're winning. So until people want to get serious about this and start paying attention to the things that matter, we're going to continue to lose. So do you want to win or do you want to whine? That is the question that conservatives really need to consider. Because right now, I don't see them as useful at all. Because they're so distracted by the books, 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 the books. They are losing sight of what actually matters. And every single day that they go distracted by the goddamn books, there is a new equity policy being implemented. There is a new plan being implemented. There is a new health policy being implemented. There is a new gender and sexuality alliance being implemented. There is a new club that these kids are being requested to join. There's a new project in their classroom that's teaching them about equity. And conservatives aren't seeing any of it. They aren't paying attention to any of it because they're so focused on the fucking books. I told people this was going to be a distraction a year and a half ago. I was read at and canceled for it, and I was 100% goddamn right. 100%. 100% correct. Now, whether or not people want to acknowledge that because they're more interested in my tone than they are in actually solving the problem, we'll see. But if conservatives keep going down this road of the books, we will all lose, and we will lose badly. Because we don't have a lot of time to be able to start something that's going to turn this shit around. They have integrated it into policy across the country. We see it on the investigation streams all the time. Every single school investigation stream we do, and I've done, what, probably a dozen of them at this point? They have been integrating it into policy in some places for 15 years. And no one's caught it because reading policy is boring. Reading long PDFs that lay out exactly and precisely what they're doing because they put it all in writing. It's boring. And books with sex in it are sexy and exciting and an easy thing. That's really why conservatives are focused on the books. Because it's an easy thing. And then they get that one book banned from the library and they think, all right, I'm done. We won, they lost, we're winning, they're losing. And they pack it up and go home and sit back in their easy chair and kick up their feet and they don't do another goddamn thing. And in the meantime, the policy just keeps getting worse and keeps getting more in depth and keeps getting more integrated into every single part of the school and educational structure. And they don't even see it because their influencers are like, we're winning, the woke is on the run, we're turning it back. No, you aren't. No, you aren't. And we see it every single time we do one of these investigation streams. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And it's getting worse at a rapid rate. And there will reach a point where it will be absolutely impossible to turn it around. And we may have already passed that point. So please, stop getting distracted by the book banning bullshit. Stop it. I don't know how else to say this. I could coddle conservative, be like, it's okay that you want to ban a book, honey. It's okay that it offends your fragile Christian sensibilities. I do not know how to get this through the heads of conservatives. I do not know how to get them to listen. I have shown it. I have shown it live on my channel on multiple occasions. I have a whole fucking book about it. I have a whole podcast about it. I have a whole goddamn series of videos about it that span back 2.5 years. So I'm sorry if I'm speaking in a tone right now, but I literally don't know what more I have to do to get conservatives to listen and to see what's going on right in front of them. Because every time I try to explain it, this is the reaction I get from conservatives. Every single time I show them evidence on the screen of exactly what's happening, they go, we can't see it, it's not happening, we're winning, we can't see it, we don't know what you're talking about, you just want to teach sex in school! If you want to send me the stuff you have, I'm happy to help you spread the word. activelyunwoke@gmail.com. Yeah, we just looked at California yesterday. California, by the way, is completely fucked. California is completely unfixable. In the state of California, parents have no way to opt their kids out of any of this. It is not possible. Every public school in the state of California is completely fucked via California state law. California is not savable in any way. I hate to break it to anyone in California, but that's just the way it goes. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. I did see people in the chat saying that the video they have is on YouTube. We might have to watch it at another time, but guys, I will be back in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Because we're doing Nothing Remotely Controversial live tonight on the channel. This was a late stream because we were doing Spy Stream. And so we got started a little late and it went a little bit longer than I thought. So guys, I'm going to take a 20-minute break. Come back for Nothing Remotely Controversial. It's going to be completely fun. I'm not going to yell at you at all. It's going to be awesome. It's our lighthearted look at the news. If there's anything you want Joshua to psychic, now's the time to send in a super chat. Get it at the front of the queue. Guys, I'll see you very, very soon. And yeah, go catch a bathroom break, get a cup of water or a drink, and come back for Nothing Remotely Controversial starting at 9:30 Eastern. Bye, guys. We'll see you soon.